These days, when we buy a new smartphone, we get luxuries like a bezel-less screen, a huge screen which is almost as big as the size of a screen on a tablet. We get multiple cameras on the back, and these phones are pretty huge, pretty chunky because they're packing a wallop, including a huge battery. But it wasn't like this till a couple of years ago. Phones only had bezels. There was hardly any screen. Screens were rather humane, rather small. The cameras, well, you only got one alongside the one on the front. And phones were rather small and diminutive, sleek and sexy. And if you happen to use an iPhone, you got one more thing called a home button. And that's exactly a throwback that the new iPhone SE in 2020 is, because it essentially is a new iPhone which looks identical to the iPhone 8 that came out in 2017, but has the brains of the iPhone 11 Pro, which makes this really powerful. At the same time, the joke right here is that the most affordable iPhone is more powerful than the most expensive Android smartphone, and that's what makes this phone super fascinating. The most jarring thing about the iPhone SE is its design. It's kind of paradoxical. It's kind of familiar because I used to use something similar. I used to own an iPhone 6, a 6S, and even an iPhone 7, and even own an iPhone 8. So I used this size of a phone as my daily driver. I was used to a 4.7-inch screen. I was used to these bezels. But these days, I've been spoiled, partially because of the new iPhones. They are bigger, they almost have no bezels, and if you look at some of the other Android smartphones, then the bezel has been completely eradicated. And they don't get a home button, they have Face ID. That's also really important. And they really don't feel as slick and compact as this baby. And in this product red color, I almost feel like biting it like a biscuit. So delicious. Yeah, that was tasty. Yeah, and that's what makes this phone feel so impressive. It feels to me that for the last couple of years I was just having a deep dish pizza, and after years I'm getting a slice of a thin crust pizza. And you know what? I'm really liking it. I actually thought that I wouldn't be able to adapt to the iPhone SE. I remember this because it was quite vivid for me back in 2016 when Apple came out with the original iPhone SE, which kind of reused the design of the iPhone 5S, which was even tinier than this one. And at that time, this size was the standard iPhone size, 4.7-inch screen. And I kind of struggled to type on that phone. But going back from a 5.8-inch iPhone 11 Pro, going back from a 6.67-inch Mi 10, going back from a 6.9-inch Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra, this phone feels kind of usable. It's actually more than that. Firstly, I'm really enjoying something that I call one-handed usage. I can kind of reach all corners of this display, considering I've been used to humongous screen sizes. At the same time, typing on this phone has been seamless, in fact delightful. I haven't really skipped a beat. I've been able to complete full articles on this small screen. And at the same time, the screen isn't as bad as what most people would think. It's still an Apple display, which means it's really accurate in terms of colors. It's decently bright. May not be the most vivid screen out there, but it has great colors and good viewing angles. And if you're going to watch a lot of Netflix on this phone, then you're not going to suffer letterboxing because Netflix is kind of optimized. It was originally built for this kind of a screen. So that's another great thing. And overall, you will get everything done on this screen. It's going to be a really good screen for everything. It's just not going to dazzle you, and yeah, it will have the bezels. But one of the advantages of these bezels is that you also get the home button. And in a post-COVID era, when Face ID, especially when you have a face mask, doesn't work that accurately, despite Apple's new software update, Touch ID is godsend, and Touch ID remains the best fingerprint scanning technology on a mobile phone. Imagine this, Apple dumped this technology for all intents in 2017 on its phones. It went all in with Face ID, and 3 years on, Android smartphones have still not managed to catch up to Touch ID. That's how good it is, that's how secure it is. And this bad boy is a real secure phone. It's easy to use, really well built. It also gets IP67 water and dust resistance, which is great. You don't get that on a lot of expensive Android phones, some phones that cost upwards of 15,000 rupees. So that's another great thing. It's a timeless design, and generally it's a beautiful looking, compact, tiny little device. The one thing most people aren't going to talk much about on this phone are its incredible speakers. It's quite a feat of engineering on Apple's part, because these speakers sound louder, clearer and punchier than most top tier Android smartphones, and it's basically right up there with the iPhone 11 Pro in terms of audio quality. Maybe a notch, a sliver inferior. And that's quite a feat of engineering, because this phone is so tiny. So in terms of physics, got to say, Apple is kind of bucking physics out here. And that's really impressive. So if you're going to Netflix and a chill a lot on this phone, then this phone is going to provide a really pleasurable experience. On top of that, let's talk about the performance of this phone. And that's the key highlight, isn't it? This phone gets the A13 Bionic chip. And the A13 Bionic is faster. It's marked faster than the latest Qualcomm Snapdragon 865, and even faster than the Exynos 990, which is there on the Galaxy S20 series. Probably a year and a half or two faster than Qualcomm's latest and greatest processor, which is basically the processor of choice on all top tier Android smartphones, be it the Mi 10, be it the OnePlus 8 Pro, or anything else that may come later in the year, because that is Qualcomm's flagship. And what's interesting out here is this Qualcomm chip is really new, while the A13 Bionic came in September 2019. So it's already 9 months old, and it's going to be probably replaced by the A14 Bionic later this year. That also means this phone is rapid. It is a screamer. It's as fast as the iPhone 11 Pro in day-to-day usage, which basically means it's the fastest smartphone you can get. I believe it could be even faster, because you get this tiny screen, 4.7 inches, and it's not even a full HD resolution display. You get around 326 pixels per inch. So it's driving fewer pixels, so it will have way more headroom compared to an iPhone 11 Pro, which has a 5.8 inch display and a higher resolution, and games look really beautiful on this phone. And the only drawback is the screen size, but if you can deal with it, you will really enjoy gaming on this phone. And generally anything that you do on this phone is going to be rapid, and it will blow its Android competition out of the window like a cyclone. Yeah, Apple actually used to call some of its cores cyclone. So that's another Easter egg in this review. Another impressive thing about the performance of this phone is that the A13 Bionic kind of also elevates the performance of this camera. Yes, it's a single camera system. It actually gets the same optical hardware from the iPhone 8, so it's rather outdated optical hardware. But you got to remember, back in 2017, that optical hardware was cutting edge, and it was bleeding edge stuff, and it still is very competent. And when coupled with the A13 Bionic chip, which improves the ISP, the processing, and Apple's new smart HDR technology, you're getting a camera system, a primary camera, which is going to hold its own against the iPhone 11 Pro in most situations except low light scenarios. In low light, the iPhone 11 Pro does get night mode, and in indoor situations you can even get deep fusion on that phone. Apart from that, this is going to come really close, and you can augment the nighttime photography limitations of this camera system by downloading an app called Neural Cam, which you can get for around $200, and it will give you a really good night mode, which will be up there with the Android competition. The other thing that the A13 Bionic elevates is portrait mode. Apple claims this is its best single camera smartphone out there, and it's true because this phone can do portrait mode using machine learning derived from that A13 Bionic chip, which has a neural engine, it's got machine learning accelerators, it's got all kinds of tech gimmickry. And what I noticed, for humans, the portrait mode photos come out even better than the iPhone 11 Pro, which was pretty much right up there with the best. It's doing better edge detections. The hairs strands they look really, the blur is really natural, and it's actually quite insane. But where it falls behind is it does not do object detection, and it will not recognize your pets or any kind of animals. But again, you can augment that also using camera app called Halide. Halide is amongst the best camera apps that you can get for an iPhone, and they have figured out a way to do depth sensing for objects, and it does a pretty decent job of it. And generally, as a standalone camera app, it provides way more control, raw photography. It's got a great user interface. It's just delightful to use. And the other thing that most people don't talk about when they're talking about smartphone cameras are not talking about video. And this phone is one of the best video cameras that you can get, period. And in fact, the only two phones that do better video than this one are the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro. And the reason they do better video isn't because they shoot better quality of video, it's just that they get better perspectives. The iPhone 11 gets an additional ultra wide camera, and the 11 Pro gets the telephoto and the ultra wide in addition to the standard camera out there, and you have 3 perspectives there. Even on the front facing camera, you get a 7 megapixel sensor, which is similar to the one on the iPad Pro, and it's great for video calls. It does portrait mode photos, and it even does all portrait mode effects, which you can't get even on the iPhone XR. So that's also a really good front facing camera. So overall, in terms of video capability, this phone will just blow any Android smartphone competition out of the window. And that's what is so amazing. Holistically speaking, if you just subtract the telephoto and ultra wide angle camera, then this iPhone SE camera system is probably going to be better than almost all Android smartphones in the market. And you can augment its capabilities for less than 500 rupees and make it even better. That's kind of insane. The one thing that's not really insane is the battery life on this phone. Obviously, it's a really tiny phone, and that meant that Apple couldn't fit a huge battery, but the battery life is still surprisingly decent. I was getting around 5.5 to 6 hours of screen on time. I also managed to use this phone fully on a single charge through multiple days. So that's what most people are going to do, and I was using it quite heavily. I had 4G and Wi-Fi on at the same time, was shooting videos, taking photos, Instagramming, making phone calls. By the way, call quality on this phone is actually better than the iPhone 11 Pro. I don't know why, but I felt it was better. Maybe the size and where the earpiece lands up, I don't know, but that's happening. And on top of this phone supports up to 18-watt fast charging, which is not the fastest charging out there, and you get a crummy 5-watt charger. But this phone again surprises, supports wireless charging, which even the most expensive Android smartphones sometimes do not support, and that's again incredible. And the last thing that I would really want to touch upon is software support, and that's really important. iOS 13 supported iPhone 6s, and the iPhone 6s came out in 2015. This phone is out now in 2020. You can expect it to get software updates up to 2024. And the way Apple releases software updates, one year it'll have a lot of new features, and the next year it'll kind of refine it and make the phone faster than what it was originally when you bought it. That's the way Apple does updates. It's kind of a tick-tock approach, and that really works well. And the reason I say this is a big deal is because if you compare what you're getting on Android is kind of pathetic, because Android phones will, and that too the best Android smartphones, will only give you up to 2 years of software support. And in front of that, this is a great value proposition. You know what? 42,500 rupees is no great shakes for a really high-end smartphone, especially one that comes from Apple and looks as good as this one. 42,500 is no great shakes to get a processor as powerful as the A13 Bionic, which is also faster, probably faster than your MacBook Pro. And rupees 42,500 is no great shakes to probably get the best compact smartphone in the world right now. And rupees 42,500 is no great shakes if you happen to own an HDFC bank credit or debit card, because then you can get this phone for 38,900. And that's the beauty of the iPhone SE.